everyone, this is Sergei Sputnikoff speaking. Welcome to another episode of Ushanka Show. So recently I made a couple of videos about my experiences riding intercity bus in the Soviet Union. We can call it Soviet Greyhound. And today, as I promised, I would like to share my experiences riding American Greyhound, and it happened twice. I rode Greyhound bus from Michigan all the way to New York City back in 1995 and then again in 1996. So here we go. American Diaries, 1995 by Sergei Sputnikoff. My adventures on American bus. October 26. Today was my time to be on the road again. My Michigan adventures finally came to an end. I said goodbye to Norma, who was very kind to drop me off at the deserted Greyhound bus station in Benton Harbor. I purchased a ticket to New York City and waited for my ride. Besides the old backpack I came to the US with, I now had 2 additional large suitcases and a gym bag packed full. The station clock showed noon. CCUSA, my exchange program, provided free flights to the US and back to Russia, as well as the tickets to the camp. Unfortunately, I had to cover the cost of the trip back to New York City. Plane tickets out of Chicago were north of $200. Ouch! So I decided to ride the bus for a far more reasonable $90. A huge silver Greyhound bus pulled to the station right on time. I noticed that I was the only white guy boarding the half-empty bus. The seats were quite comfortable and I could relax and close my eyes. Ahead was a 20-hour trip to the East Coast. To my complete dismay, the bus merged onto the westbound lanes of the Highway 94, and 3 hours later, I found myself in downtown Chicago Greyhound station. There, I had to spend another 3 long hours waiting for a ride to New York. I expected to board another barely occupied bus because all American buses I rode so far hardly had any passengers. I was so wrong. The Greyhound to New York was packed full. All the seats were taken. I realized it was going to be a very long and painful ride. It didn't help that the unshaved guy next to me looked very sketchy. I constantly checked my bag, pockets, and my leg, where a thick wad of hard-earned cash and a unique wallet was safely secured to the calf inside my jeans. The gadget was a goodbye present from her. The comfortable seats became totally intolerable in about 6 hours later, and with a person next to me, I had no room to stretch my legs. My buttocks went numb. It was going to be a torturous night. I was impressed by how fast the Greyhound was going on the highway, way quicker than any Soviet buses I had ridden. Having a bathroom on board was great too. It was as big as the ones we had on the train cars back home, but missing poop on the seat and the nauseating smell. It was late at night when we approached Cleveland, Ohio. The view of its brightly lit skyscrapers against the dark sky reminded me of Chicago. The highway went right by a huge stadium, which was awash with dazzling, vibrant lights. Some game was going on there, football or baseball, I couldn't tell which. It looked like the local team won because the pitch-black skies exploded with colorful fireworks shortly after we passed the stadium. We pulled into Cleveland Greyhound station and the driver asked all passengers to get off the bus so it could be refueled and cleaned. It didn't sound like we had a choice, so I wandered around the lobby half asleep for about an hour. The neighborhood outside didn't look very enticing, and I decided to remain indoors at that late hour. Once again, I noticed, first time it happened in Chicago, that the Americans at the bus stations looked quite different from the ones I had met before. They seemed, well, poor. A couple walked into the building, and I froze. There was something very familiar about the way this guy and his girlfriend looked. Both wore black leather jackets, the dude sported a buzz cut, and the chick had too much makeup for the Midwest. I slowly strolled by those two, and sure enough, heard them speaking quietly in Russian. Their comrades, so busted. Finally, boarding was announced for the ride to New York at door number 1. The guy hugged his lady and left. People formed a line holding their tickets. The Russian girl was the first one in queue, but the driver politely asked her to step aside and let the passengers from the Chicago board first. She stood there completely confused, clenching her bus ticket and probably wondering what the hell was going on. As I walked by, I couldn't help it and murmured to her in Russian, "Sweetheart, the passengers from Chicago have a priority in boarding. You will have to wait just a little bit." You should have seen the look of astonishment on her cute Slavic face. It was priceless. She barely managed to blurt out, "Spasiba," thanks in Russian. It was time to be on the road again. The Greyhound headed east, slicing through the darkness with its bright headlights. I barely slept that night. That sketchy unshaved dude got off the bus in Cleveland, and a new guy sat next to me. He was a big fellow who dominated both seats. I had hardly any room to move. It was bad. October 27th. Dawn came and slowly turned the gray sky into dark red explosion. The bus cruised into the vast kingdom of New York City. This poor Russian photographer was dead tired and half asleep. I stared through the glass at the big city's morning rush, watching the legions of cars and people that almost instantly made me dizzy. My God, I spent way too much time in the Michigan orchards. Precisely at 7 a.m., right on schedule, our silver coach slowly rolled into the New York City Port Authority bus terminal. I was slightly nervous. Bill, a friend of a friend, was supposed to meet me and show around the Big Apple. I could definitely use some help with my numerous pieces of luggage. A slender girl approached me while I was trying to figure out how to rearrange my bags. I vaguely recall her being among the many bus passengers. "Do you speak Russian?" she asked politely, catching me completely off guard. "Yes." I wasn't really sure what was happening. "I knew it!" she suddenly exclaimed in Russian and smiled happily. "I noticed you all the way back in Chicago, and I wondered if you were one of ours." Dang it. This comrade got busted too. I was slightly disappointed because my looks were supposed to be all American, including the matching dark blue and yellow Michigan sweatshirt and baseball cap. The girl had worked at a summer camp as well and was now heading home to Russia. Bill was waiting by the bus station exit. He recognized me by my Michigan sweatshirt. The blue and yellow outfit worked out great, even though back then I had no idea that my gear represented the college football team, not the state of Michigan. The already familiar New York subway took us to Bill's apartment, where I dropped my bags off and took a quick shower. Now I was ready to explore the Big Apple. Okay, so that concludes my Greyhound story from 1995, and now I'm gonna read you a small part of my experience riding again a Greyhound bus from Benton Harbor, Michigan to New York City in September of 1996. Back to the motherland. September 29, Sunday. My bus was leaving at 1 p.m. I loathed using Greyhound for such a long overnight trip, but it was still the cheapest way to get to New York City. It sucked that CCUSA, our exchange program, did not cover the cost of traveling back to the airport. Herb drove to Benton Harbor, where he treated me to lunch at the Country Kitchen restaurant across from the bus station. Once again, the farmer surprised me. He was a ruthless capitalist boss who paid $5 but demanded hard labor worth $10, if not $20. And don't start me on fruit deliveries to Indiana, which were greatly appreciated but not compensated. But today, Herbert was unusually human. He paid for lunch and asked about my plans for the following summer. I had nothing to hide. I wanted to come back to Michigan. In fact, I wanted to return as many times as the exchange program would allow me. The upper age limit for the participants was 30-year-old, so I could count on at least 5 consecutive trips to America. The money was just too good to pass on. There was no way I could find a job that paid even $1 an hour back in Ukraine. The bus arrived right on schedule. It was time to say goodbye to Michigan. I climbed on board the half-empty Greyhound and found a seat by the window. I was in a good mood for only a couple of minutes. To my horror and dismay, the bus took the wrong ramp and drove west towards Chicago. Again! Such a detour happened to me last fall, when I wasted over 5 hours only to find myself back at the South Bend Airport in Indiana. This time, I specifically asked a Greyhound lady not to sell me a ticket that would take me back to the Windy City. I was so enraged that I wanted to cry. I told her, please, no Chicago detour. Well, the Greyhound lady didn't lie. I never made it to Chicago. In about an hour, the bus pulled off Interstate I-90 and stopped at an unobtrusive bus station. "Gary, Indiana," announced the driver and looked at me. "It's your stop, bud. You'll have to wait here for your bus to New York City." I grabbed my luggage and got off the coach along with a dozen other passengers. It was impossible not to notice that I was the only white guy at the bus stop, and soon I was the only guy when the other passengers left. It was another sunny and warm September day, no reason to sit indoors. I stepped outside to have some fresh air and look around. The station was sandwiched between the noisy highway and what looked like a downtown, albeit suspiciously deserted for a Sunday afternoon. Something was definitely wrong with this place. I stared at two stately concrete buildings adorned with massive domes that made them look almost like churches. What was this place? Why didn't I see any cars or people on the streets? It looked like a scene from a Hollywood movie about the end of the world. Something was definitely wrong with this town. Just in case, I slowly retreated inside. I saw no reason to attract unwanted attention. For a while, the streets remained deserted, with only an occasional car driving by. Finally, I saw a pedestrian, a rough-looking black guy, slowly pushing a shopping cart full of random junk. Holy crap! They dropped me off in the ghetto! I mumbled and stroked my inner thigh unconsciously, where a thick wad of cash, the compensation for my farm sweat and tears, was hidden inside my jeans. I had no idea my options for switching rides were between the Chicago Greyhound bus terminal and the scary station in Gary. I would gladly pay extra to do that in Chicago. A few years later, I learned that Gary, Indiana consistently ranked number 1 as the most dangerous city in the US. And in 1994, this town was named the murder capital of the world. I was truly scared by now. Like a spooked bird, I hid in the furthest corner of the empty station, away from the windows, and sat there motionless, waiting for my ride. Those 2 hours seemed like an eternity. Finally, I saw with great relief the bus approaching the station. The coach wasn't packed, and I easily found a row with 2 empty seats. Soon the Greyhound was speeding along the highway, this time in the right direction, heading east towards the city of New York. Camp Rosenthal, Tremendous Food Farm, and the scary downtown of Gary, Indiana, were left behind. My American adventures of 1996 were coming to a close. I had no plans to explore the Big Apple this time. Too much cash was already spent, especially on my California trip. In less than 6 hours after arriving at Port Authority bus terminal in Manhattan, I should be boarding a plane to Moscow. It took me some time to calm down and get comfortable. Finally, I was ready to do something I had dreamed about for a long time. I dreamed about it while watching the kids at the pool at camp. I dreamed about it while spending countless hours picking apples at the farm. I counted days, hours, and minutes till this very moment. All I needed was my cassette player, the headphones, and that special audio tape I brought along to America, Actress Spring by DDT, a rock band from Leningrad. I popped the tape in, closed the clamshell lid, and closed my eyes. I pushed the play button gingerly. Rodina, еду я на родину. A familiar rasping voice of the lead singer Yuri Shevchuk filled my head. Motherland. I'm going back to the motherland. Someone may call her ugly, but we still like her. Finally, I was on my way back to the motherland. The end. Okay, my friends, I hope you enjoyed this production of my Greyhound bus rides of 1995 and 1996 by Sergei Sputnikoff. You can purchase my books, American Diaries 1995 and American Diaries 1996, on my website, sputnikov.com or Amazon. Thank you again, and we'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye.